we opened up talking about the transition of your diet to a mostly carnivore diet. Last time we talked, you had just written the book 2 Meals a Day. So I think a good place to jump back in here is to take me through a typical day when you break your fast and what you're eating.
So I typically don't eat what most people would say is breakfast. I flew in last night. I'm in LA. I flew in yesterday from Hawaii. Got up this morning, had a 7:30 appointment in Beverly Hills. Got back in time to do this interview with you. I'll probably eat at 12:30 or 1 o'clock today. That'll be my first meal. And because I'm on the road and I have a certain availability of certain foods, I'll tell you exactly what I'm going to have today. It's going to be a salad, but it's going to be a salad with a lot of tuna on it. So, and I'm looking forward to that. And then I won't eat again until dinner time, and I'll have a giant steak, probably maybe some broccoli, maybe not. I don't need to. Sometimes a steak is enough. Glass of wine, and that's about it. Might have a piece of chocolate while I'm watching, catching up on my Netflix. I was gone. I was in Europe for the summer. Didn't watch any of my my Netflix shows, so I've got a big list of things to catch. My wife and I. This is our time together. We hang out on the sofa and cuddle and watch Netflix. What can I tell you? That's a great way to end the day for me.
I can relate. What are you guys into these days?
Perfect Couple is what we're watching right now. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah, it's a new Netflix special. It's very good. But we'll watch. We're always we love BBC productions, like a lot of the detective shows from the British Broadcasting Corporation. We're just we like murder mysteries. We like I liked Yosemite. I liked Yellowstone. I'm just going to Yosemite tomorrow. Yellowstone. Lots of cool stuff on TV now.
So let's zoom in on this early part of the day before you break your fast.
Right.
Are you starting the day with water, electrolytes?
So I start with coffee.
Talk about some of the things you're having in that fasted state. Yeah, coffee.
Coffee, yeah, that's all. I mean, I don't drink a lot of water. I'm drinking water now because I try to keep wetting my whistle if I'm talking a lot. I work at a computer almost all day long, and I don't talk a lot. So I'm not, and then when I do a podcast, all of a sudden I'm talking for 2 hours. So
we'll talk more about the hydration piece, because there is this underlying assumption in the health and wellness space that we need to be drinking this copious amount of water per day, and you can take this number, your body weight in pounds, divide it by 2, drink that many ounces. There's a lot of people standing behind recommendations like that, and I know you don't feel that way. So talk about hydration in a general sense.
Yeah, in a general sense, drink when you're thirsty. No need to drink when you're not thirsty. I don't drink, prophylactically, except to wet my whistle when I'm speaking. And even then, it's sparkling water, which has an effect, a palliative effect on my voice. No, there are days when I finish the end of the day, I'm like, I didn't have anything to drink today, really. I'm not suffering as a result of it. Look, the human thirst mechanism is one of the most perfect homeostatic mechanisms in the human body. And if you think about our ancestors, they didn't carry a Stanley bottle around with them all day long, or drink 2 gallons a day until they peed clear. Water was a rare commodity in many cases. They weren't always near a river or a stream or a lake. Maybe they licked the dew off the leaves in the morning, and that was their water for the day. So it's not like we need to be drinking a lot of water. I would argue in some cases that drinking too much water has a dilution effect on electrolytes in the body, and you can. There are actually conditions that you can develop from drinking too much water, and I've heard of that happening. It happens a lot. By the way, it happened a lot in the in the endurance community in the 80s, 70s, and 80s, where people are told, if you don't drink a lot of water during a marathon or a triathlon, you might die. And then come to find out, people were dying of the exact opposite, hyponatremia, which is too little salt because of all the water that they were drinking and not taking in enough electrolytes. So, that brings me to electrolytes. So I don't drink a lot of water. In terms of electrolytes, look, the guys at Element are good friends of mine. I think they've done a good job. I do find now that putting Element in a bottle of cold sparkling water at the end of an hour and a half hot bike ride in Miami Beach is a great thirst quencher. So that's a time that I will drink. If I've been sweating 3 pounds or 4 pounds off in the Miami heat, riding a fat bike in the sand, I'll absolutely rehydrate with that. But that's me being thirsty, right? That's me paying attention to my thirst mechanism. And once my thirst is quenched, I'm like, okay, I'm done. I don't need to overdrink or overhydrate beyond that point.
I'm a big fan of Element as well, and I've been doing the carbonated Element through the cans that they recently came up with, and then through that realized you could just add it to carbonated water too, and it's just a great combo.
Again, I've been out of the country until last week for 3 months. So they've introduced that since I've been out of the country. So I'm looking forward to trying it. But I do hear people say they like to mix carbonated water with the canned Element. Yes,
They have this new black cherry lime flavor, my new favorite, so be curious to hear what you think of it.
looking forward.
So you mentioned having tuna for lunch and a steak for dinner. It gets me thinking about different kinds of protein, different nutrition. Do you have a hierarchy of protein, the way you look at animal products, like beef being at the top and then pork? And basically, how do you look at different meats and getting them in on a regular basis? And do you look at them in a hierarchy of, best all the way down?
I don't look at a hierarchy there, other than there's a grouping of, like you say, pork, beef, lamb, fish. Well, I shouldn't say I don't have a hierarchy, because I don't eat a lot of chicken. I'm not a big fan of chicken, and I only eat turkey at Thanksgiving. So my main go-tos are lamb and beef, and pork, but not within that. There's no hierarchy. They're all perfectly fine as far as I'm concerned. I don't eat a lot of fish, but tuna fish in a salad with Primal Kitchen mayo is kind of a easy way to get my 35, 40 grams of protein at that meal. I do eat salmon once in a while, but I'm generally not a big fish guy. Had an amazing lobster in Hawaii 2 nights ago, and that was a treat. But again, I don't think, oh my God, I had lobster. That's a slightly substandard form of amino acid profile. No, I don't like to spend much time um, thinking about things like that. Once I've said, okay, I'm going to lump all these proteins, the ones I like are in this group over here. And once I've put them together, now it's a matter of, what am I hungry for tonight, right? Like, I'll always go for lamb if there's a good lamb on the menu, because that's my favorite meat. But there's not always a lot of lamb around. And when I'm home, I always have 10 or 15 steaks in the freezer, ready to go. That's my go-to dinner at home. And then, pork I love a good pork chop, but for me, they're tough to come by. So I don't eat them as often as I might. But it really comes down to convenience and taste and availability, but it does not come down to amino acid profiles and things like that.
Do you eat a lot of ground beef?
I don't eat a lot. I mean, I have it's absolutely a go-to. Like, if I'm in a hurry, nothing thaws as easily as ground beef, and nothing cooks up as quickly as just straight ground beef in a skillet. I mean, that's ground beef and onions could be one of my favorite, like, quick meals, right? I don't eat a lot of ground beef, but I love it when I do.
A couple of follow ups in relation to the fish piece. One being tuna and heavy metals. And I used to eat a lot of tuna back in the day, and I do enjoy it. And I've stayed away, whether it be because of myths or truths about the heavy metals and toxicity. Obviously, you're not somebody who's fearing that. Talk about it from that lane.
Well, yeah, I don't really have an issue with that, primarily because when I eat canned tuna, I use Safe Catch. And Safe Catch is marketed as lowest or non-existent in heavy metals. They test for heavy metals every tuna they catch. And then, if I'm having ahi from Hawaii, because I'll eat at a restaurant in Miami that gets fresh tuna flown in every day from Miami. I'm from Hawaii. Um, I don't really eat it enough to think that it's going to be a problem for me or problematic for me. So it's not. It's not. I mean, I get my when I get my blood work done once, maybe every 8 months. I look at heavy metals. I look at mercury, and I'm never at an area where I'm concerned. So I don't agonize about it.
The other reason that somebody might put certain meats in a hierarchy, well, micronutrients, but one thing I'm thinking about specifically is omega 3s. And it sounds like you are getting fish, on a semi at least regular basis. But is that something you're considering when you make, say, your weekly menu? I want to get fish in once a week because of my omega 3s. Do you supplement with those? Basically, how do you feel
Yeah,
about
yeah,
omega 3s?
yeah. I used to supplement with them. I used to make them, and I think Primal Kitchen probably still makes, my former company still makes omega 3s. I'm not. What happens over time is I look for what's the minimum effective dose of anything that I can do or consume. So what's the minimum effective dose of exercise I can do and feel good and be strong and not get sick? What's the minimum effective dose of food, calories I can take in a day, not be hungry, maintain muscle mass, never get sick? What's the minimum amount of micronutrients I can take in, or minimum amount of supplements I can be required to take in and still be healthy and fit? So over time, I've reduced my intake of omega 3 supplements. And when I'm in Miami, I do have salmon for lunch once a week, mostly because it's a ritual that I have. There's a restaurant I go to that has the best salmon in town, a giant piece of salmon once a week. That's sort of my main intake of omega 3s. I don't look at the omega 3s necessarily as a component part of grass fed beef, for instance. People say, well, wait a minute, don't you only eat grass fed beef, Mark? No, I eat, or USDA organic, no hormone, hormone and antibiotic free, but I'll eat grass finished beef. Almost all beef is grass fed for much of its life. And I don't really buy beef for its omega 3 content because there's so little omega 3, even in grass fed beef. It's such a tiny amount, like it would not be a good source. So I don't really pay as much attention to the omega 3s as I used to, for better or worse. I don't know. Maybe I'll change my mind. I don't know, Jesse, maybe I'll change my mind after this podcast. But for right now, like the salmon I have at least once a week. Maybe I'll have it again at dinner at a restaurant some other night, but it doesn't factor in. I don't really plan a strategy for a week's worth of food.
The way you described your typical day there with the fish at lunch, the steak at dinner, and you mentioned a big steak. Obviously, you're prioritizing protein, but let's get into the details of what that looks like in your head. Are you trying to hit a certain grams per meal to stimulate muscle protein synthesis? Talk about how you look at that, or is it more relaxed?
It's much more relaxed. I don't even look at that. I look at the only thing I do is every meal I eat, I'm like, what's my protein at this meal? Really, what's the protein going to be? What's the basis of the meal going to be in terms of protein? So I wouldn't go, order a bowl of spaghetti with butter on it as a main course meal, or necessarily a sandwich with cheese on it. I look at more of again, fish, or beef or lamb as a main protein source during a meal. And I don't look to. I see all of the talk on the internet now about grams per pound of body weight, things like that. Again, if I look at the minimum effective dose of protein, for me, it's probably 100 grams a day, maybe even less. Might be 80 grams a day. Now, some days I get 120, maybe I'll get 130, but I weigh 172. I don't get 172 grams of protein ever, and I can't imagine how people do that, who are getting a gram per pound of body weight. Now, if you're a large person and you're on a diet and you're wanting to satiate and be satisfied at every meal, that may be a good strategy. Try to base your main caloric intake on gram per pound of body weight. Therefore, if you're a woman weighing 172 pounds, you want to get down to 140. Making protein the emphasis there. But even then, that's a lot of work. My wife went through a bodybuilding phase about 2 years ago. She wanted to put on muscle mass, and she had to fight to choke down 140 grams of protein a day, and it was not comfortable for her. And she put on the muscle, but she couldn't sustain the diet. It was completely unsustainable. So when I look at what my macros are for the day, I look more at like what are my macros for the week, almost like did I average 100 grams a day for the last 5 days? That's more what I look at. Then how do I hit that 40 grams or 35 grams per meal, every day? It just doesn't sit that way with me. If I sit down and have a 12-ounce steak for dinner, I don't even know what is that 85 grams maybe or something like that of protein? I don't know.
I'd be guessing.
Yeah, same. And it depends on the cut of meat. But, so that's a big chunk of protein. And it would beg the question, how much of that is assimilable from that one meal, right? We know it's more than the 30 grams we used to think. We used to think, again, 10 years ago, the thought process was you can't assimilate more than 30 or 35 grams of protein in one meal, so why do it? That was back in the day when you'd say, okay, I'm 5 small meals a day, protein at every meal 5 times a day. Well, that's unsustainable too. It was the bodybuilding mantra for the longest time. So you didn't go into cannibal mode and start cannibalizing your muscle tissue.
If you ever get into a position, say you're middle of the week and you're realizing you're not consuming as much protein as you'd like, do you ever get in that position and then prop it up with a protein powder, making a shake or something like that?
There are times, sure. There are times when I'm like, okay, I'm not going to be able to eat until 4 o'clock because of the way the day is structured. And, maybe I didn't eat the way I wanted to yesterday. I'm not really interested in doing a 20-hour fast right now. So yeah, I'll use protein powders as a supplement to sort of, maintain the amino acid intake from that regard. So unless it's a fully programmed fast, an intentional fast, I might use protein powders. I always have some on hand at home.
If you enjoyed that clip, you're going to want to head over here and catch a full episode. I'll see you over there.
Dietary fiber is not that necessary if you are taking in, for instance, larger amounts of collagen-based products, because the gut bacteria, the gut biome loves collagen.